The Disney wartime era was certainly a different era of Disney. A majority of the films released in this era were package films containing multiple shorts to create one feature-length film. This was due to Disney being short on staff because of World War II. Over half of Disney's employers were drafted to war during this time. But this wasn't the only reason they were short-staffed during the wartime era. Another reason is that there was massive layoffs from the previous era of the Golden Age. Since most of the movies were extremely experimental, a lot of them ended up losing money in the long run. This caused the company to have to cut off employees to ensure the survival of the company. A third reason that animators were sparse during this era is because during this time, Walt Disney tried to unionize the company, as many companies were during this time. Many of the workers were not fond of this decision and went on strike. During the wartime era, the US government fully funded a trip for Walt Disney and his animators to take to Latin America. The result of this trip was two different animated movies, that being of Adios Amigos and The Three Caballeros. The first of these, which was heavily influenced by the American government to be a propaganda film to dissuade Latin Americans from siding with the Nazi regime of Germany. Although not many of these movies are looked upon as classics or even remembered very fondly at all, or in most cases not even remembered in the first place, today we are going to be taking a look at all of them and ranking them. Starting off with the worst in my personal opinion, being of Melody Time. Melody Time is less of a movie and more of a musical experience, similar to Fantasia but being only half the runtime. While most of the segments are musical, some do have voices and sound effects. The highlight personally for me would be Johnny Appleseed's. Overall, it's just alright though. Melody Time is easily forgotten. Next we have Adios Amigos, which does have multiple live action segments which are not very good to be honest. It stars both Donald Duck and Goofy in their own parts of the movie respectively, and introduced Jose Carioca, which I personally found a quite enjoyable character. After creating Adios Amigos, Disney followed it up with The Three Caballeros. This continuation would see a new character added, that being of Panchito. Overall, the package is just alright. Throughout the film, they commonly referred to themselves as three gay amigos, but of course at this time it meant something differently. Or maybe it didn't. Ranking second for the Disney wartime era is Fun and Fancy Free. The film begins with a short following Bongo the Bear, sort of a spiritual successor to Dumbo. We see Freddy Fazbear here locked in a cage before escaping the circus and leaving to the forest, where he'll find a female bear that he has to slap to show her love. A bit of a weird one. The second half of Fun and Fancy Free is that of Jack and the Beanstalk, this time starring Mickey Mouse, Donald, and Goofy. The entire short is being told by a narrator who's inside a house with two puppets and a little girl. The two puppets behave similarly to Duck and Yellow Guy from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Well, I would understand if some people do find the puppets annoying, they did occasionally say something entertaining. Although the first short of Bongo the Bear was quite boring, I did enjoy the second short of Jack and the Beanstalk. It's a shame that Disney canceled the gigantic movie that was planned to release. I should also mention that we see the return of Jim D. Cricket at the beginning of the movie, where we can also see the goldfish and the cat from Pinocchio. Ranking in number 1 for the wartime era is The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. The first half of the movie being short of Mr. Toad is alright around with some enjoyable moments. Mr. Toad is accused of being stolen a car and goes to court, but sadly he doesn't have Saul Goodman to come save him, so he goes to jail, where his horse and the best part of the entire short comes to save him. The true criminals behind the stealing of the car are also the weasels from Roger Rabbit. Overall, it's an alright short, but the second one is far better, that being The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Although not much happens within the first half of the second short, by the end of it, it definitely ramps up, and becomes the best story inside of the wartime era. The character design is top-notch, although I do think the movie is hurted by the first half only being narrated and not having the characters speak themselves. Disney sure does like to do a lot of remakes, and this is definitely one I could see them remaking quite well. The highlight is certainly the final chase between Ichabod and the Headless Horseman. The wartime era is certainly not the best of Disney eras, but it is not without its own value. It's an interesting point of Disney history and animation history to look back on. It's a shame that many of these movies are completely forgotten by general audiences. I would love to see a character like Jose come back into the spotlight. Well, there you have it, my ranking of the Disney wartime era.